We are all together recording. Here's Anastasia and Bindi and me. All right.
Okay, ready? So, I'm not here to tell you to save turtles or to recycle your bags or even to turn off the water when you're brushing your teeth. No, these are all common sense things that we have been told time after time. So obviously, there's a problem here. We all know the first step to fixing a problem is to recognize the issue, and sure enough, the large majority of people are still failing to do just so. And that's why I've chosen this topic. In order to get to the progressive steps like recycling our bags, we need to see the data ourselves and understand what exactly is happening and what the problem is. I'm here today to explain how the rising levels of greenhouse gases are a result of human activities which have caused the climate to change. First, I'm going to go into detail on what exactly these greenhouse gases are and their dangers. Then I'm going to show evidence that human activities have contributed to the rise of these gases and go through some arguments against these studies. Then lastly, I'm going to describe how the climate change has caused irreversible catastrophic events that are happening now and more yet to come in the future. So, what are these greenhouse gases and what do they do? Well, greenhouse gases absorb heat in the atmosphere and trap it towards Earth. These greenhouse gases make up this greenhouse effect, which is like a warm blanket covering Earth, trapping heat in. In an article published by the Centers of Science for Education in 2019, it explains what exactly greenhouse gases are. And I quote, "Greenhouse gases are more complex than any other gas molecules in the atmosphere. With a structure that can absorb the heat, they radiate the heat back down to Earth's surface to another molecule or out into space." These articles list several of the main greenhouse gases, which include carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, water vapor, and even methane gas. Although this may seem beneficial, keeping us alive and all, over the past few decades, the rising levels of carbon dioxide has actually caused major problems, such as higher temperatures and melting glaciers. In the website for World Wildlife, it describes some of the present-day effects of climate change. More frequent and intense droughts, storms, heat waves, rising sea levels, and melting glaciers and warming oceans can directly harm animals, destroy the places they live, and wreak havoc on people's livelihoods and their communities around. Dangerous weather events are becoming more frequent and severe. People in cities and smaller towns are facing consequences from heat waves and wildfires to coastal storms and flooding. This site has several links to show how the different regions and how different species have all been affected by this. This info is current and the website was updated this year. So now that we know how these gases have caused the temp to change, how they have caused the global temperature to change and increase how it has increased and how it affects different regions and species throughout the globe, what's causing all these gases to be so abundant? Well, most scientists suggest that in the past couple of centuries, that human activity has produced extreme amounts of greenhouse gases into Earth's atmospheres. These studies show that greenhouse gases are being emitted at their fastest rate yet, as for the CO2 levels have never passed 300 parts per million until the middle of the 20th century, which would be now. In the measurement notes of the studies held at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii by Rob Monroe from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, published on May 2nd of 2018, last year, he explains the most recent studies. Rob goes on to state, "This marks the first time in history of the Mauna Loa record that a monthly average has exceeded 410 parts per million. This also represents a 30% increase in carbon dioxide concentrate in the global atmosphere since the Keeling curve began in 1950. Well, what is the Keeling curve, you may be wondering? This curve is actually a graph of the accumulation of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere based on data taken at the Mauna Loa Observatory. This graph clearly shows how the rise of greenhouse gases was caused by human activity, as it took place at a much faster rate than natural sources could produce. Many people out there believe that human activity is not contributing to climate change, and these scientists, teachers, and plenty of others actually reject the idea of human-caused climate change. In one of these arguments to back this up, it is claimed that climate change, or that the climate's temperatures have risen and lowered before. In fact, it is normal for Earth's climate change, and it always has warmed up and cooled down. A study by Willie Soon at the Harvard Center for Astrophysics in 2005 states, many records reveal that the 20th century is probably not the warmest nor the most uniquely extreme climatic period of the millennium. This journal states how warmer temps are inbound of the natural temperature fluctuation over the past 300 years and how they're almost normal. Another statement that backs up the opposing side is that the human-produced greenhouse gases don't actually affect the climate, but instead they're absorbed into carbon sinks. It is written in the 2012 study called Increased Net of CO2 by Land and Oceans in the past 350 years. Since, and I quote, since 1959, approximately 350 billion tons of carbon has been emitted by humans to the atmosphere, of which about 50% has moved to the land and oceans. The study also states that the rate of carbon dioxide being absorbed has doubled since 1960. Although these arguments are from scientists, scholars, and even students, they are flawed, and there are other studies that can prove them ineffective. In the 1994 research emphasis held at Oak Ridge National Lab concerning the carbon dioxide emissions from human activity, it is proven that these gases produced from human activities such as burning fossil fuels and cars can be differentiated from naturally emitted gases by their specific isotopic levels. Measurements of the CO2 in the atmosphere confirm that the carbon sinks do not absorb nearly as much as most scientists and people believe. More studies in 2012 concluded that there was about 6.5 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emitted from human activities in the United States alone. So, overall, we've gone through what greenhouse gases are and how this greenhouse effect acts like a huge blanket over the earth and keeping it warm and heating it up. I described how this can cause extreme temperatures and how this can cause extreme weather events. We also went through two different pieces of evidence against my claim, broke them down, and found different scientific studies to prove them wrong. Now that you have seen some of the data for yourself and some of the evidence, and we have a strong idea of what exactly is happening to our home, I encourage all of you to have your own opinion on this. I'm not going to ask you to change your lives dramatically or even stop brushing your teeth without the water on. I do want you, though, to be aware of your surroundings. We can't deny a problem and wait for it to disappear. We need to take this into our own control, and I don't know.
Get it together.
I don't have the other card.